All right, and we're back. All right.
I feel like I should
Okay,
clarify
let's
something.
let's
Like,
go
I'm
for it.
thinking like, so when we're talking about the
Yeah.
hip scores, um, I feel like I should clarify, I when I have the dogs that do, like, which I've had a couple that were
Mhm.
OFA fair, but then their pen hips were fantastic, like, in the 2s,
Okay.
3s, whatever. Um, they did not have osteoarthritis, so I do wanna make that point that, um, I do rely heavier on the pinhead because it's the
Yes.
measurement. Or I feel like that is to me, my personal preference is to have that, it's a box basically. It's like this contraption that they have to put on the dog, and then they pull the
Right.
legs up like they're in a position, but they're on their back. And it actually measures how far does this come out when they're
Yes.
walking, and how much of this is happening. And it's a measurement. So I'm just more comfortable with it only because my vet said we have a new scorer and dogs are getting mild that previously would have been fair or good. And he pretty much can tell you what you're going to get.
Y
Like he looks at him
Yes,
and tells you pretty
and I
close what you're
agree
going to.
that because we use the same vet that I can speak on this, that
Yeah.
he is pretty good at kind of predicting where you're gonna fall. Um,
Yeah. So, and I think, and I also have experimented a little bit where I had, an OFA fair dog and bred it to a good or excellent, and then the offspring come out
yeah.
fair or
So,
good.
like, I
So
mean, honestly, most of us breeders and, I'm as transparent as they get. Um, I'm not testing every puppy that comes out. There's been a person or 2 that I know have gone that route because they're financially, capable of doing that. So, you know, t and I wanna put this out there for the listeners that, you know, we pick a dog based on certain criteria for us, whether that be temperament or whether that be structure or combination of both. Yeah, typically we can all
mhm,
agree as breeders that you're not going to get everything in one package. You can get an amazingly structured dog that meets all your physical requirements. They typically will fall short on the mental requirements, and or you may get a dog that faults somewhere along it structurally but fills all the gaps on the mental side. So to say that
and a lot of times we're looking for one structural piece
correct.
too. I mean, I have worked hard on the rear angulation because, I try to take a step back and look at my dogs. Again, at shows, you really can see it at shows. What don't you have that the
Let's
other
talk
dogs
about
have
this. Let's
that are
talk about
beating?
this because this right here, this topic right here is my Achilles heel. Okay. This is my Achilles heel.
Yeah.
And I'll admit it to everybody in the world. I have had dogs that are straight stifle, barely any angulation, that will jump 5 foot in the air a million times a day in their run, that will hit a spring pole and fly through the air and grab this thing. I could flirt pole them for 20, 30, 40 minutes, whatever their conditioning allows, and just run them through the gambit of flipping through the air and never have any knee or hip issues. I can have a dog that displays what some would think as perfect angulation for an American Bulldog and flirt pole them and blow out a knee and fucking, just I what to you really is what this breed should have for absolute angulation. Should they be a dog that really has
Well,
a great turn at the stifle, and or is this lack of angulation that we see in the breed quite regularly a point of function that we as show breeders, you and I, to some extent, have taken
mhm.
into account to move our programs forward because we have been told that it's important.
Well, I think to start with, we breed to the breed
Yes.
standard. Okay. So whether it's the angle of the shoulder, you know, the look of the feet, the length of ears, the length of tail, the turn of the stifle, the top line. I think every single piece of the animal needs to meet the standard. So if you're not breeding to that, then you're not doing it
Can
right,
I
in my
interject?
opinion.
Can I interject for
Because
1 second? When we talk about and I know this is gonna be a double-edged sword, but when we talk about form follows function or function follows
Mhm,
form, when you talk about that and you put dogs out in the woods and they're banging away on these hogs and you've got this exceptional dog that's just snagging ears and he don't give a shit. He's got enough self-awareness to keep himself safe, but he's going out in the woods and he's baying these pigs and he's getting them done and the breeder's being successful. But then that breeder subsequently decides to enter the show ring, and his dog is straight stifle,
mhm.
or the shoulder set is forward, or the the top line is high in the rear, or but the dog is performing, and that's, I guess, in theory, is the original standard for breeding dogs was by function. And when you
Well, I mean, it's not the show standard,
right,
though. I
but it
mean,
does that impact the breed as a whole because you're comparing the functionality of the dog to the show standard?
no, I think okay, so, I recently went through my apprenticing. I think I did one extra.
And
I
that's why
had
I'm
to, but
asking you this question.
I
Yep.
yeah. So, okay, so as a judge, when I look at the dogs, I don't I don't care about anything else. I don't care if the dog can catch a pig. I don't care if the dog loves its owner. I don't care if the dog's an asshole. Like, if the dog can get through the rules in the standard, I'm only comparing that dog to the written standard. I'm not even really comparing the dog to the other dogs in the ring. You're taking the written breed standard and you're looking at that dog by itself. So, you go through the dog, you look at its bite. I check the ear length. They should come to the corner of the eyes. That's where they should hit. And you feel the dog. Like, is it a solid dog or is the dog soft? You know, like the worst thing for me to see is that out of shape dog. Like, so I'm probably going to get off on
Let's
a
go
tangent
for it.
here, but especially so as being a competitor showing and then being on the other side, I will tell you there are a million things that you cannot see as a competitor that you can see as a judge. And it really opened my eyes because there's been times that I've got beat and thought, what in the fuck? Like that dog is a piece of shit. Like, why would that dog be my dog? And I'm going to tell you, there is probably out of 10 dogs, that I looked at, 8 of them crossed, either in the front or the rear. Um, Teeth, the bites are all over the place, jacked up. Um, Short ear sets, short tails, weak pasterns, poor body condition. So, people like to stand on the sidelines and say, and I'm guilty of this, so I'm not pointing fingers, but people like to stand on the sidelines and talk shit about the choices that judges make. But the reality is, if you're not right there seeing all the things that the judge is looking at, because they're looking at this written standard, which is like every
Mhm.
piece of the dog, um, you really shouldn't have an opinion because you just you have no idea. And I'll tell you, you had at one of the shows I was apprenticing, you had the best dog in the ring, and you weren't handling the dog. Like, you literally were not handling your dog. And I remember saying something to you like, handle your dog because you had the best dog, right? Like, hands down, your dog had the right bite. It had tight feet. It had good pasterns, ear set, tail set, top line, like, didn't cross in the front of the rear, which, like I said, 8 out of 10 were crossing. So it was like, so people on the outside are like, they're friends. You know what I mean? That's what you hear all the time. Oh, they're friends. It's political. No, no, I wasn't judging, right? I was just apprenticing. So it wasn't my decision at the end anyway. But if I was in there by myself, I would have done the same thing because I don't want to pick the shitty dog over the dog that should get it just because the handler was being kind of lazy and wasn't
And let's
handling the
let
dog.
Julie, let's
Yeah.
just for the record for the record, between friends,
Cut that if you
it
want, but
probably was a co-own. It probably was a dog that I didn't train and that I had produced and that I brought off someone's couch. But it's here nor there.
yeah.
It's fair game, and I don't wanna discount that.
Well, no, but if you're going in the
100%.
ring, I you should show the respect to the
100%.
judge,
Yeah.
and the whole time you're in there,
Let's get
show your dog. I see people all the time when they say, "Go around to the end,"
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
walk.
Okay, so let's get deeper into this. Let's get real right now.
Okay.
Okay? Let's get real right now. So you said that, and I'm going to try to do my best to recap this. You are talking about the structure of a dog, okay,
Mhm.
with regards to showing. But the basis of a breed standard comes about with the functionality of an animal. So when we talk about Yag Terriers, Patterdales, we talk about working pit bulls, we talk about a lot of different breeds. A lot of those breeds were formed in theory, and I will say this in theory, by people that were working towards a goal. How do you differentiate as a judge or an apprentice the physicality of what the dog is doing in the ring versus what the dog was bred to do? And when we talk about a great hog dog that has a lot of titles on, or not even titles per se, because that's not as apparent right now as it used to be, but the ability to catch, the ability to do its function over the ability
Mhm.
to be structurally correct. Where do we weigh that
Well
in?
well, I think when you're looking at the dogs and you're putting your hands on them, like, for example, Voodoo. I had Baki, she was in the top 10. I was so excited to have a dog in the top 10. I pulled her out of the kennel and she was bleeding, and I was like, but I that was the only dog I
Yeah,
was gonna take, so I pulled old Voodoo out of the kennel. I was like, "Come on, girl, you can
yeah.
come to show with me. We'll go support the show."
Mhm.
No
Right.
intentions of winning, but I went against, um, a dog that was, it was a male, he was bigger, more bone, um, maybe a little, I don't wanna say sloppy, but he was, you know, um,
Yes. Yeah,
mushier,
okay.
I
That's
guess.
fair.
She's pretty hard. I mean, she's
Yeah,
a
that's
pretty hard
fair.
muscular dog even at my age. So, and you gotta remember, this is the dog that went to aviary nationals as a puppy and 4
Yeah.
shows didn't lose. She was a great show dog. She's so mellow. She just stands
Mhm.
there, just she'll stack herself. But anyway, um, we won that class because the judge said, "This is a working breed, and when I look at these 2 dogs, you got similar faults, similar attributes, but it comes down to the first paragraph in the breed standard is this dog was meant to be, a
Mhm.
working dog." So, she won because she could work, and there was no way in hell the other dog could. So, you know, kudos to that judge for picking that up, doing that
Yeah.
way, but,
I've
um,
experienced something similar.
I
I've
I
experienced something similar, and
think
I
that
don't wanna cut you off, but I've experienced something similar going back to when you talked about the longevity of getting a champion title on a dog. India was a
Mhm,
dog in the ABRA where I started and you started, where we went up. We were in Canada, we were in Ohio, we were in Chicago, we were in a little bit everywhere in the Midwest, and India lacked type, but there was no doubt within the breed community that the dog had athleticism, was an ex an exceptional animal for her own right. Didn't matter what breed it was, and I remember winning a ring under a UKC judge where that was their initial kind of criteria, was that the dog was supposed to be a working dog, and at this moment, with this best female and this best male, that this dog looks like it could perform the work, and this dog is looking to struggle to do so. So I guess it still comes back to me where we talk about form versus function. And we compare this, and I know you, myself, and a plethora of other breeders have gone down this path of like how much type versus how much function, and really where does your program lie within this? Just like you've said, you've seen some really nice puppies lately that have stopped your proverbial scroll on the social media, but
mhm.
you kinda see those dogs maybe at 2 and 3 years old and realize, "Wow, they really couldn't perform." Beautiful puppies. And
Or they couldn't live in
I've
Florida.
always said this about, um, Danny Frost puppies when she was in the heart of breeding American Bulldogs, that her puppies really had a wow factor about it. But then we compared it to Vero, and Vero was like, wow, her puppies look like proverbial dog shit, but turned into, like, awesome dogs, So it was like, okay, and it goes back to, like, looking at the longevity of the breeder, which we all understand we have to do, um, but it's interesting as we get further, and you and I kinda have a similar timeline in this dog breed, and we're truly dog enthusiasts. I will say that about both of us, that we have always had the dogs at the foremost of our best interests. We always wanted to do something better than what we could do in the
Yeah.
past. Um, and that's interesting because you go back and look at what people have done and how things have moved around and your times change and people change and we all move our movements on.
All the people that
Yeah,
have
yeah,
talked
yeah.
shit and they're
So let
still
we
riding on their mom's
we're
coattails.
like we're about 2.5 hours into this, and there's some things that I still would love.
We could
Yeah.
talk for like
Well,
10
I
hours about
understand
dogs,
this, and I
bro.
want to because for myself, it creates content, but I wanna get into some things that I think are still important that we haven't touched on. Um, one of the
I wanna answer your question,
Go
though.
ahead.
I wanna answer
Go
your
ahead.
question about the
Yeah,
rear
let's do that.
angulation. So you asked me about the rear angulation. I have had dogs in pet homes that, um, blew their knees out, and as I went back and looked at those dogs, they did lack the rear angulation, and it is, from my research, that when the thigh comes down and you get that turn at the stifle, that ligament is longer. So if you think about a dog that comes down and they go straight, that ligament is shorter and it's
Mhm.
tighter. So I don't think it means they're going to blow their knee out, but I think it means they have a higher propensity to have that injury. And um the other thing I see a lot, now this is since I've been judging, I had never really noticed this before. And Tom Hare had pointed it out to me one time I was evaluating puppies and I sent him a picture and said, like, something's off here. What is it? The dog had a really long upper thigh. So it was almost like the thigh extended into like the
Mhm.
turn almost.
Yep.
So, I see it like, since I've been judging, I see it more in the standard dogs, that they have a really long thigh, and it just throws off when you're looking at the side profile or their movement, it's almost like they can't extend. They don't get, like, that rear drive and extension because the upper thigh
So
is
how
so
would
long.
you what
And
I
that
wanna ask is, and we're gonna get into the weeds here. So how would you correlate that information about the dog's movement to actual
Mhm.
functionality? What if you knew that that dog was a high
Okay,
propensity
so
catch dog?
mhm. I mean, if you think about it, okay, try to go run
Oh,
and
I
don't bend
get
your
it. No,
knees.
I get it, but I'm just asking
Yeah.
you.
So when you're moving, you're gonna have no you're not so when I see an American Bulldog moving, okay, let's take Wizzo,
Yes.
right? That Wizzo had the best rear drive I've ever seen a dog. When she moved, she kicked dirt
Mhm.
up with her
Yes.
back feet. She had rear power, and she actually could have had better rear angulation. But that is, I think, what it also if you look at a dog that has lax triangulation, their top line's always
Typic
off. Their ass is higher than their head.
Sometimes.
I mean,
Sometimes,
it
yes, but
it, like,
typically,
pushes
yep.
their ass up, because the rear angulation
Yeah.
drops them
No,
down
I
a little
agree.
bit. If you tend as a handler, you can hide stuff sometimes, like, you can put your dog's leg back rear of a
Hey,
little bit to give them a little bit more
hey,
bend. I
the
mean,
the best
there's but
the
that's
best
the
of
thing,
us do
being a
everything we
handler.
can in the show ring.
Yeah, well, being a handler and then moving into
Yeah,
judging, like, I know how to make
yes,
them move their dogs
yeah,
so they can't hide it,
yeah.
you know? So they're and that's like, I was with Pete and I was like, "I want you to have them just take a step forward and don't touch their
Yeah.
dog." Because everybody was hiding the worst parts of
That's
the dog,
that's
Like,
hey,
I don't want you to hide it. I
stop
wanna see the
stop
dog,
telling
you
our
know?
secrets. That's what we do. That's what we do. The greatest
Yeah,
of us over
take a
there, that's
step
what we do.
forward. Were
Hey,
you were you at nationals when the judge had him run him
no,
backwards?
no, but thank God.
Oh my god, everybody freaked out.
Thank God. So let's we're gonna start working in. We've been doing about we got 2.5 hours in. I want to break this down to a finishing point. I want to spend the last half hour. I
Okay.
know I've gracefully that you have spent our time together, and there are some things that I want to talk about that I think are important for everyone else to understand with the breed, getting into breeding, because ultimately my goal is to move this breed forward and give people a jumping off point to feel
Mhm.
successful. I don't want to stipend anybody because of our egos. I want to move them forward and because it's for the betterment of all of us. I mean, the breed has to move forward.
Listen,
So I want to talk.
you asked my husband. He gets irritated with me because I will spend a stupid amount of time with people trying to
Yes.
help them. And and I think, I think that's what new people really need to do. They really need to, um, find somebody that doesn't mind getting their brain picked or, like I have, um, umpteen documents of, where I buy medication, how do I make formula, what's the dosages for this and that. Like, find somebody that's willing to share all of that with you and just pick
And
their brain.
you know, the
Like,
the absolute truth is you and I probably share a similar person, but at the end of the day, like, we all call on somebody, like, 'cause none of us,
mhm.
even though we've seen a lot of whatever, we haven't seen it all. So, I
Yeah, like, I remember reaching out to
oh,
Rachel multiple
Rachel?
times. I'd have weird shit happen, and I would call Rachel and be like, "Rachel." I remember my first Shorty Bowl litter. I called Rachel, and I'm like, "They're, like, congested. The vet wants to put them on Clavamox," and she's like, "Nope. Tell them you want a Convenia shot or they're gonna die." And I called him and said, "My friend said they need a Convenia shot." And clear 7 days, it was
Rachel
gone. And so
with her,
yes,
and she's gonna come on
yeah, tons of
substantial
knowledge.
survival rate than anybody else
She
I
needs
know, and,
yeah, and I'll tell you, breeding the little
oh,
dogs,
dude,
they literally are a million times harder than American Bulldogs. So, appreciate the hardiness of the American Bulldogs, their ability to breed and deliver and take care of their puppies, like, it's it's awesome. I mean, when I have an American Bulldog litter, I'm like, "This is
so let's
easy."
let's go through a
Yeah,
little bit. I wanna do we're just over 2.5 hours. I wanna do about less than a half hour of speed run. So we're gonna go through some stuff,
okay.
and I just want you to touch on these things. Temperament in a puppy, what are you looking for?
Not
Okay.
fearful. Um, they can I should say not overly fearful. Like, I don't expect a juvenile dog to behave like an
Yep.
adult dog. So, they need time to mature. You wouldn't expect, a 6-month-old baby to not be afraid of things. So, it I think, sometimes we expect too much out of our puppies. So, I think just not an overly fearful dog, like, you're bending down to pick it up and it's freaking out trying to bite you or something. That would be a hard no. Um, I Actually, I had a dog like that out of a litter, um, 10 months old, had to
Okay.
call it. So, um, you know, it if they, are aggressive towards children at any age, um, I don't believe that they don't deserve to be on this earth. I learned a long time ago from, a mutual friend of ours that a dog that is noise sensitive, overly noise sensitive to the point of, pissing itself, um, being totally whacked out scared is probably not gonna make it with me. Um, but for puppies, I think, um, they're babies, like, you really don't know. I don't know any test or anything that's going to prove to you what that dog's gonna be as an adult, and I think there's so much that happens between the time they're born till the time of maturity that, molds that dog. I don't think it's like they're born this way, like I mean, there are some that are just, their minds are screwed up or whatever, but for the most part, I've had puppies that were totally fearful at 8 weeks old that grew up to be bangers, like, I think it just I don't know. I don't have a solid answer because I just don't think as a puppy, you're gonna be able to predetermine what that dog's gonna be as
Let's
an
talk
adult.
confirmation. Confirmation versus temperament. What holds more weight
Mm.
and what have you seen change more in a dog?
Oh, man. Um, 50-50. I mean, um, I've had puppies that were kinda chicken shits that come out of it, like I said, and were bangers, and I've had puppies that I thought were the shit that turned out to be shit. So, I mean, it's it's just like a crapshoot. I mean, if somebody thinks they're gonna have a litter and keep back one dog and it's gonna work out every time, it's not. Like, you gotta decide. I mean, and you have to know when to call it too. Like, when do you call it? Like, dog's not gonna make it. Let's just find a nice home. At our place, if they can't beat what I got already,
Yep.
that's where I call it. Now, I probably could sell them to
Yep.
another breeder and they'd be a great dog for their program, but on my property, if they can't beat what I got, I don't keep them because I got a lot of
Well, and
dogs
that's where
and
we go back to the understanding of what it means to have a breeding program and what are you willing to assess? I mean, we can go down a road of profitability in breeding, and I don't think that's warrant to this.
that's
Well,
not
that's
even a
not warrant to this conversation because you and I have never been profitable in breeding programs. We have done it for the love of the dogs. There's a lot
yeah.
of other information out there that talks about profitability within breeding programs, and honestly,
No,
I think
no,
that's a different
I mean,
conversation.
technically, I have yeah, like, technically on taxes, we have earned money. Now, is it a
How
lot?
many
No,
how many
like, a
litters do
couple
you have
grand.
to have a year for you to feel that you are quote unquote profitable if you're honest with your returns?
I honestly would have to go look at the tax returns because I don't
Yeah.
even look at them
I would say for
because I don't
most
care.
people,
Like, I only do it because it's the legal thing to do. Like, I have to claim the
yeah.
money, so I save all the receipts and write off all the expenses, but I mean, if the IRS said, "This is your hobby and you don't have to
And
keep receipts,"
and
I would
that's what it
stop.
is. It
I
is
mean,
your hobby, and I just wanna be clear to everybody that when you get into
yeah.
this is your hobby. If you're not doing this for a living,
I mean, it's my life,
yeah, but
honestly,
it's
like,
it's not your
I work
livelihood. Yeah, and yeah,
No, no, I make 6 figures at my job. I don't live
right.
off my dogs, and I haven't always made that much money, but
There's I
we've
think that
always worked. I mean, we've always
yeah,
worked
I
full
think there's
time.
a balance, and that's a totally different conversation for a different time if you would welcome that, but I think there's a balance between the profitability of dogs versus a dog program, and I think they don't correlate in the same respect, and I don't wanna get onto that today.
You know, I would have to be like a total jackass, I think. Like, um, like when my dogs are no longer a part of my breeding program that they disappear. I mean, I'm never gonna be that person. Like, I'm never gonna, kill a dog because it's no longer breedable. Like, if I can't find them a suitable home, then they live with me their whole
At your
life. I mean,
expense.
it's just yeah, it's part of it. I mean, it's a lifestyle that we have chosen and, you know, our life revolves around the dogs. I mean, if we wanna go away together, we hire somebody to come stay and take care of the dogs. If, I travel for work, my husband has to pick up the slack, and he has to take care of everything while I'm gone. So, it is a huge sacrifice to have a breeding program. We have, um, 15 American Bulldogs, and I have 13 of the other dogs. So we have, 28 dogs. Now, a lot of my little dogs don't live outside. They are inside and they can cohabitate and they're not jackasses like the American Bulldogs. But the American Bulldogs are my passion. And um I love my little dogs too. I love my shorty bulls. I love my Frenchies. I'm a dog lover. Like I'm an animal lover. But I think if somebody's getting into breeding, even if you're not health testing, you're just throwing 2 dogs together and you think you're gonna make money, you're living in
Uh,
outer space because it all costs money. You're gonna have an emergency C-section, you're gonna have deworming, shots. I mean, I guess if you're a total piece of shit and you don't do any vetting, I don't know, but I I just don't ever remember a time that I felt like I have 6 dogs bred right now. I have 6 dogs bred. 7, I'm lying, I have 7. I just bred another
you're
dog the other
cra
day. I
let's
have
just
2
stop
American
for a second.
Bulldogs.
You're crazy.
Yeah. Well, not really. I mean, I think this is my husband says all the time, because 'cause I'll say, "I don't know why you can't do this." And he's like, "I'm not you. Like, I am not you. I'm never gonna be able to do all that." Like, that's just the way it is. I have a system, we have a system. Like, it's no big deal to me to turn out all my dogs. Like, it's no big deal. I enjoy it. I love it. Like, taking care of my dogs is like my therapy. But I think, like, even having that number of litters, I'm not gonna make money. Like, 1, the market right now fucking is
100%.
terrible, which I
Yep,
don't even
yep.
care. Like, I don't care about the market, honestly. I breed for me. I have dogs that are older, and they're either going to, contribute to my program or they're never gonna get bred again because I'm at, like, the 6-year-old mark, and after that, I really don't wanna breed them. Like, I just feel like, to me, that's, like, the cutoff. 7, I don't wanna breed them after that. Like, I have dogs that have had 1 litter. I have a 6-year-old dog that's had 1 litter, and she went to heat, and I'm like, "Well, I either am gonna breed her or she's just never gonna have another litter," and I really want something off of her, so we did it. And it was like everybody came into heat at the same time. and the little dogs, you don't skip them. They have such a short reproductive life that you just don't. So, that's a whole nother ball game, but, um, yeah, I think if you're coming into breeding dogs thinking that you're gonna get rich and, no, you're gonna clean up a lot of dog shit, a lot of dog puke, you're gonna break up a lot of fights, a lot of vet bills, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of heartache. I tell it people I work with, they'll talk like, "Oh, when we lost our dog, it was awful." And I was like, "Well, think about that times
Yeah,
like 30, because I lose more
yeah,
dogs in like a 5-year span than people have probably lost in their whole life. And every time, one of those dogs passes, like, it's not that because I have that many dogs, I don't have a heart. Like, we've had whole litters die. Like, I had that
yep,
herpes
yep,
virus litter, and I tried to share everything I was learning because I had never heard of it. So, and I probably am too transparent
yeah,
sometimes on social media where I just say
no,
everything, like, "This is what's
no.
going on." Like, we moved to Florida and we lost I had taken puppies to nationals, and they were acting like they didn't really feel good, and I got them home. They were 10 weeks old. They had health certificates at 8 weeks old, perfectly healthy, and they just started dying, like, one by one. Well, in Florida, they have something called a greyhound hookworm, and it actually gets into the tissues. So hookworms go on through the tissue, and you can treat the gut for hookworms, but hookworms are actually in the tissue. So I just was talking to a whelper yesterday. So like I'm always learning, right? Like just yesterday I learned this. There's a shot, the Pro Heart 6, I guess it's kind of expensive. It actually will kill the hookworms that are in the tissues, but it's the only thing that'll kill them. So, I'm always learning. I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm always talking to other dog people, learning how to, you know, treat things, how to, keep my puppies healthy. Like you're always evolving if you're in dogs. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that just pump out litters. They don't really take care of their puppies, and I don't even say anything anymore because I just stay away from them. Like, it's not I would get so upset and I would say something all the time. I was on all the groups and I would, put my opinion, I'd get arguments, and I don't have the time or the energy anymore. So, I just stay off of 'em.
Well, Julie, I think we have truly given the listener what I think they deserve, which is a deep dive into this breed. And there's more that we can talk about. And I think that might be a part two. Um, but what I love about you is your transparency. I've known you for a long, long, long time. And
Yeah.
we've never really truly work together, but that doesn't disparage either of our programs. And I love that you
No.
have come out here and given um, a full transparency to these listeners to understand what it means to be an American Bulldog breeder. And, there's something to be said for somebody that's willing to come through and be honest of what is going on within the breed and the true nature of these dogs, and I commend you for that. So I thank you for your time. um I think there's more that we can talk about in the future, and this has been exactly 100%, 1,000%, even more than what I would expect to have for my first episode. in American Bulldog and Company because this is what's going to propel people moving forward into breeding better bulldogs and taking in
Yeah.
a different perspective of what it means to be show versus working and working versus show and taking into account bloodlines and line breeding and crossbreeding and all the things that come into the indifference of what it means to be a real American Bulldog breeder, which you have proven to be.